2 p.m. If I could have everybody sign in, please.
There we
And everybody's here. Obviously, I am not Mike Wade. Mike is on his way back from Memphis. His flight got canceled. So I may or may not be the mayor for another day or so. So we do start every meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I think there's our scouts.
Don't sit down.
Don't sit down. Come on down front, gentlemen. Gonna put you to work real quick. Then you can bribe your folks into taking you to Baskin Robbins or Butterfield or something.
It's 12 degrees.
Hot chocolate.
Because that changes the desire for ice cream?
Sometimes.
Not in my world, pal. So come on down front, gentlemen. We'll turn around and then we'll have you lead everybody in the Pledge of Allegiance. So if everybody from the audience could join us as well. The flag's behind me. There you go. So we'll turn around and then y'all figure out who's gonna start and then we'll follow you, okay?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Which troop are we from? Excellent. Well, thank you guys for being here this evening and helping us out with that. All right, next item is special presentations, which I don't think we have any, Michelle, this evening. Awesome. Moving right along to item number 3, Parker Chamber of Commerce update, and I see the dashing and dapper Dennis Houston ready to wow us with items about the Chamber of Commerce. So, Dennis, the floor is yours, partner.
I'll do my best to make my presentation special. How's that?
I appreciate it.
Very good. I'm glad you clarified Mayor Wade being late, 'cause I thought there might have been a coup that I hadn't heard about. So.
Not from me.
Good evening, everyone. I wasn't at the last meeting. My apologies for that due to a scheduling conflict, but wanted to give you an update on some great things happening at the Parker Area Chamber of Commerce. Just returned from our regional chamber conference in Henderson, Nevada, and had some great conversations and some things that are going to come out of that we'll see some certain benefit from in the community of Parker and the region as a whole. One of our key presenters was the Executive VP of Education Partnerships for Google, and they're looking to form partnerships with the business community to try to build that bridge between business and education. And you guys have all heard me talk about that quite a bit in the past, so we're excited to look at some potential partnership there with Google. And as we were looking at some of our workforce efforts, which was kind of a theme of many of the presentations related to the conference, Frank Luntz was one of our other keynotes and had a chance to spend some one-on-one time with him the next day looking at what some of those things look like and what some of that polling looks like going forward for workforce in the future. We participated in a panel discussion talking about the focus of community marketing and its importance, and we do a lot of that serving as the official visitor center, and so we were pleased to participate with some of our counterparts from Washington State and California as well as part of that panel discussion. Some great things working on, some behind the scenes, some out front on community advocacy. Our annual Washington, D.C. fly-in, where we partner with some of our neighboring business organizations. It's coming up March 14th, 15th, and 16th, and we're excited to carry that message of the business community here for the South Metro area out to D.C. and look forward to being that voice. Speaking of DC, this coming Thursday at the Chamber, we'll be hosting U.S. Congressman Ken Buck's new Chief of Staff. Excited to have her join us to more for a meet and greet at this point. E470 Tim, the executive director, will be our keynote at our business impact meeting this Thursday at Colorado Golf Club, talking about the economic impact of E470 on the Parker area. And I think, Josh, you know a little bit about that. We hosted our third annual Economic Outlook Forecast Breakfast a few weeks ago, and that was a big success. Looking ahead, both our national economists, the chief economist for the U.S. Chamber and the chief economist for the governor's office, both had good things to say about 2018 and looking at what that looked like going forward. So some good things ahead in 2018. We attended the grand reopening of the schoolhouse, kind of a sneak peek last Saturday. Kudos to Elaine and the entire team and everyone involved and the contractors. It was pretty cool to see that transformation of what's happened, not only with the schoolhouse, but with the annex portion of that project. On one other thing on community advocacy, our Douglas County Business Alliance that the Parker Chamber is a part of with our other chambers of commerce in Douglas County, honored to chair that group for 2018 and for 2019. And we did something in the last few weeks that we have never done before, and that's analyzing how many total businesses and constituents we represent as an organization. So we could, of course, use that down at the State House when we're lobbying for pro-business and pro-community growth efforts at the State House. And those numbers tally up to 4,500 businesses and 155,000 constituents and jobs. And to give you perspective on those two numbers, that's about 20% more businesses and just short of 20% more employees that are in downtown Denver. So we always hear about downtown Denver. We have some exciting things happening right here in Douglas County, and that includes some of our business partners along the I-25 corridor as well into the Denver Tech Center area. Some things on the workforce front, have had some great meetings in the last couple weeks with the Colorado Department of Labor, looking at some apprenticeship opportunities with area high schools, and we're excited to move some of those efforts forward.
During then, but this is for general public comment. So with that, I'll open up public comment at 7:11 p.m. for anyone wishing to come up and address the council.
Sarah.
Address for the record.
My name is Sandra Collins, and I live at 7832 Lark Drive in Parker. And I wanted to revisit one of the items that was on the agenda at last meeting. That was the Kime Ranch annexation. At that time, there was a checklist that was presented as to the, all of the items that were appropriate for the annexation. And one of the questions that was raised was whether or not the development that was going to be that was planned for that property was that if it fit in with the neighborhoods around it. And the north neighborhood was not included in that assessment. I wanted to bring it to the council's attention that on the north side of that projected subdivision is a community where we all live in single-family homes, but we all live on 2.5 acres of horse property. So that means that the projected development does not fit in with our neighborhood at all. I don't know what the projected value for those homes are that will be built in that area, but all of us in the north subdivision are assessed at least $500,000. I don't think that the homes that are projected will be in that category. We also embrace a country sort of lifestyle there. We've all had animals, and we don't feel that the projected subdivision will fit into our neighborhood at all. And I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Senator Fuso. Oh, questions?
John, if you want to reach out maybe and we can answer some of those questions at a email, or I'll put you in touch with John Fuso, who's our head planning guru, and we can address some of those for you, ma'am. Is there anybody else who would like to come up for public comment?
Sarah?
Are you like
Yeah, one of my employees is
tormenting
hiding
people?
over there.
Gotcha. With that, we'll close public comment at 7:14 and move on. The next item is reports, items, and comments from mayor and council. Mr. Dyak.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. The only thing I had the past couple weeks was, as a part of my DRCOG board position, I hosted a Ukraine delegation February 13th. They were interested in knowing what government was from an American standpoint. And for anybody who has been a part of DRCOG, it's very challenging to define truly what DRCOG is in a governmental entity, especially when you have a language barrier. So myself and another DRCOG council member did our best. We had a lot of questions. It was a good visit, and I think everything came out positive.
Excellent. Debbie.
I don't have anything other than to thank everyone for their indulgence in my absence.
Thank you, ma'am. Renee?
Probably the highlight of my week was the schoolhouse tour and how fabulous that building is coming along.
And Amy, do you want to speak to that? Okay. Josh?
Absolutely.
Second on the schoolhouse, and let Amy wrap that one up. But I want to talk about letstalkparker.org. It's a new website we rolled out today. It is outstanding. I want you to think of it as a mix between Nextdoor, Facebook, our website, anything you can think of, but it's actually got facts on it. And the authoritative figures are the experts that actually know what they're talking about. So if you're looking for the right answers, I'm talking to you, Facebook world. If you're looking for the true answers, please, please, please go on to letstalkparker.org and put your questions out there. We've got a few things on there. I'm looking at it right now, and you can directly interact with the police department. And I've got a tile here, and it says, tell us where we can provide enhanced traffic enforcement. So pick an intersection, pick a school zone that's driving you nuts, let them know. It's got information about our website redesign. It's got tell us your big idea. What's the one thing Parker could do better? So please, 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 Parker, we've spent a lot of time putting these things together to get the information out the best way we know how, and I want you guys to definitely use it if you can. So thank you very much.
The schoolhouse on Main Street has been under many renovations during the past year or so, and so we just want to share with the public that we will have a ribbon cutting this Saturday at 10 a.m. and it's a great time to go through and just kind of see the old historic schoolhouse, but kind of brought to modern day with some pretty new enhancements. So please join us. And that's all I have for now.
The only thing I have to add is Dennis had alluded, I spent the last 6.5 years on the board of directors for E470, and as past chair, one of the things we have there is what's called the Transportation Safety Foundation. So if there's anybody here or anybody in Facebook Live land that does things like prom after parties or things of that nature, we provide a lot of grants and funding for activities like that, really anything around transportation. So we do a lot of fundraising and then provide those grants. So if you are an individual that either participates or runs something like that, feel free to reach out and we can talk about the grant submission process and all of those things. I want to say it's usually to the tune of about between $60,000 to $70,000 a year, somewhere in that neighborhood. So again, if you do participate or run one of those activities, we'd love the opportunity to get some of that money into Parker. I know myself, I think I pay enough tolls to probably fund at least one of those. So be happy to see that money come back. And with that, we'll move on to our consent agenda. These are items that are considered to be routine and will be enacted with one motion and one vote. With that, council, I would need a motion to approve consent agenda items A through H.
So moved.
Second.
Sorry, couldn't get it out quick enough. Can we remove
Oh,
A?
you know
I
what?
can't vote on A.
Jim,
I
could you
wasn't
just
here.
abstain?
Can I abstain? How can
Or-
we?
You know what I do? I need to abstain as well.
None of course.
So I think it'd be, I move to approve consent agenda items A through
Or
H, excluding item
A,
A
yeah.
for Debbie Lewis and Amy Holland.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Got a motion from Josh and a second from John. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. For our students that are here, the last public meeting, both Councilwoman Holland and Lewis weren't here, so they can't vote to approve the minutes of meetings that they weren't in attendance at. So we have to do some legal wrangling to get around that. That's why our town attorney, Mr. Maloney, is down here. With that, item 7 is a public hearing. It is resolution number 18-014, which is a resolution to adopt the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan 2018 to 2022 as a part of the Parker 2035 Master Plan. And Dennis Trapp, you've been waiting for this
For years.
years, months, weeks. The floor is yours, partner.
Thank you. I'm assuming the title tonight is Mayor Pro Tem and Town Council members.
I answer to a lot of different things.
Okay. As you stated, the item before you tonight is review and adoption of the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. It's really our first shot at a full-blown master plan here, probably, I would say, within the last 15 years. So it's well overdue, and we're really happy to present this to you tonight. By way of definition and purpose, the Parks and Rec and Open Space Master Plan creates really a clear and concise set of goals, policies, and objectives to guide future development and enhancement of the town's park system, open space, trails, recreation facilities, programs, and various other services. It's really, I think, if you look at it as kind of the blueprint or the roadmap for us as we move forward over the next, I'm going to say, 5 to 10 years, that's really what this document provides. By way of background, we worked in collaboration, when I say we, the Parks and Rec Department, along with our Community Development Department, worked in collaboration with our consultant team, and that was the Epley Institute out of the Indiana University. And with them, we obviously developed the plan that you see before you tonight. The plan, in addition to all the information and recommendations that it provides, it also, you've probably heard us talk a little bit about accreditation that our department is going through. This plan, master plan, is part and parcel of that effort. It meets what we call CAPRA, the Commission for Accreditation for Park and Recreation Agencies. So that's another important component as part of this whole process. The process is pretty straightforward from the standpoint of a master plan. I would say the only thing that is unusual, having done these plans before, probably over the last 25 or 30 years, is accomplishing this from start to finish up there in about 7 months. So it took kind of a major lift from our department, our Community Development Department, and also having a really, really good consultant that helped us every step of the way. The 6 steps, basically project initiation in August, and that was really a lot of data gathering, if you will, which is pretty typical. And then research and analysis in August and September of last year. And that included a review of a lot of different planning documents that we've been using over the years, and really compiling and looking at those, how they would fit into a master plan moving forward. The 3rd step was community engagement. And the one thing you'll probably notice on there, if you look kind of between the lines, most of those steps were probably a month and a half process. Community engagement was 2.5 months. And that was somewhat intentionally. We wanted to spend a lot of time reaching out to the public, garnering as much input through various different means as possible. you probably understand that Parker residents are very passionate about their parks and recreation and program and facilities. So we wanted to take some time to get all that passion into the survey, get comments, good and bad. And quite honestly, I like to hear some of the bad comments because that's how we're going to improve. So that was a really important component. Needs and analysis and strategic action plan. That again is a little bit of the backbone of the plan. We have over 80 strategic action items that have been developed with our help, community development, and our consultant. And then the last 2 months, we pretty much have been working with our consultant to boil down the plan to its essence, its written form, and starting to go through that process, study sessions, and then with Planning Commission, and then obviously here tonight with Town Council. The community engagement process, as I said, was really, really important. So I did want to highlight a few things in regards to that. As you can see, the surveys, stakeholder meetings, open houses resulted in really over 1,000 responses, which is terrific. It was very helpful for us to get all those responses. The bullet points that you see below that are some of the different kinds of responses we got, so it kind of gives you a range, and those are probably some of the more important and larger input we received from our residents, including the need for an aquatic recreation facility somewhere typically on the south side of town, and we've talked about that over the years. The need to look at and explore public-private partnerships as part of a way of leveraging the town's dollars and getting facilities that we think are needed and what the residents are asking for. A good example of a leveraged partnership is something that Council's well aware of, and that is the new indoor tennis facility that we've been working on, and hopefully you'll be hearing that, Planning Commission and Town Council, within the next probably 6 weeks or so. Also, to continue planning neighborhoods with open space requirements. Our department works very closely with our planning department on all development applications, both from a trails perspective, parks perspective, open space perspective. And we'll continue to do that. And where we can maximize, whether it's developer dedications or using our time and our resources wisely in regards to those applications, we continue to do that. We've done that over the last 20 years, and we'll continue to do that. The other component that residents mentioned was they wanted kind of a balance between new facilities and maintaining existing facilities. And I thought that was interesting. I guess sometimes my perspective is doing a lot of capital projects, I like to build things. And sometimes I think we need to pause, not that I'm saying we stop doing those things, but we need to look back. Some of the projects that I've been involved in, it just seems like yesterday, but they're 20 years old. So that was good feedback from our residents. Take a look at those. If there's some that need updating, renovation, that's an important component to them, which I thought was an interesting insight. The kinds of facilities residents would like to see increased, I couldn't think of 4 things that are more diverse than those 4 up there. Restrooms, drinking fountains, water-based recreation, and then recreation center. We've talked about water-based recreation and recreation centers. We probably talked a lot about drinking fountains and restrooms, but that is actually on our radar. And those last 2 are, I'll say, somewhat low-hanging fruit. We've already talked about ways we can incorporate drinking fountains into our parks. I like that idea. There may be a little expense related to it, tap fees and those kinds of things. Restrooms, most of our new larger parks, we're trying to incorporate restrooms as best we can. Dog park is a good example, dog park disc golf. You probably saw when we reviewed the Harvey Open Space, we had a restroom incorporated into that conceptual plan. So those are things that we're already thinking about and starting to react to. Benchmarking was another component as part of this overall plan. And here again, that was important. What we did is we compared ourselves from a benchmarking standpoint to, we asked our consultant to look at half a dozen or so different jurisdictions throughout the country that were similar to ours, But the one thing that we imposed upon ourselves was we wanted to make sure that the jurisdictions we were being compared to, in addition to being similar, that they had either received a gold medal, and that's something that the National Recreation and Park Association bestows on different jurisdictions when they meet some pretty rigorous standards. So we wanted to make sure that we were being compared to jurisdictions that had a gold medal or had been accredited, like the process we're going through now. And we figured the only way to improve was to compare ourselves to the best of the best. And so that was something that we imposed upon ourselves. Based upon that, if you look at those bullet points below that, some of the things that came out of the benchmarking, summarizing some of those findings, was the need for more large special use parks. Special use parks are like disc golf, dog park, disc golf, rail bender, skate park, tennis park, and also Salisbury Sports and Equestrian Park. They tend to be larger parks. They tend to have some special use amenities. Also, as I had mentioned, some of our playgrounds need to be updated. They're 15, 20 years old or more, and playground technology and design has advanced a lot. And so there's a lot of creative things you can do with playgrounds. So we're kind of excited to explore that further. Also, multi-use trail access exceeds national standards based upon some of the benchmarking that was done. One of the things, if you look at that map to the right, recently there's been a lot of studies about how close parks should be for access by residents. And it used to be a measurement of 1 mile, 3 miles, 5 miles, which was fine, but it didn't take into account if there's a barrier. You can imagine in Parker, if you had to cross over Parker Road to get to a park, it may be only a half a mile away, but it may be a 20-minute walk. So the new criteria is within a 10-minute walk. And what we determined from a benchmarking standpoint is over 90% of Parker residents are within a 10-minute walk of a park, trail, or open space. And that far exceeds most standards throughout the country. So I think that's something from a standpoint of working with council over the years and working with our community development department, we can all be very proud of. In addition, town and HOA parks provide a great accessibility and options for residents. One of the things we began doing probably 15, 20 years ago is, as opposed to the town developing a lot of small parks, which are inefficient from a maintenance standpoint from our perspective, we basically took on the burden of the larger parks, 10 acres and over, and then we worked through our development review process as developments came in that the HOAs would have included smaller parks, and those would be maintained and owned by the community association. And our consultant said that was pretty insightful because it has served us very well from a wide range of different parks and sizes throughout the community. And then lastly, the other thing that was pointed out from a benchmarking standpoint, and we've talked about this a lot over the years, but it's our recovery rates and revenue from recreation exceeds the national average. Our current recovery rate, and it's been pretty consistent, is about 87%. And you compare that to other jurisdictions, whether it's in the state or other parts of the country, and I'd say the national average is more in that 50 to 60% range. So that's another thing that we're very proud of, and hopefully as we move forward and expand on our facilities, we can keep that same recovery rate. The needs assessment, again, several things that came out of the needs assessment was additional recreation centers should be developed within the next 5 to 10 years. Obviously, that's a big financial burden, and that's probably a larger policy discussion in the future that we'll need to have moving forward. How we do that, where we do that, how we fund it. Continued interest in additional aquatic space, both leisure aquatic space and competitive swimming. That seems to pop up on a regular basis also. Enhance or add wayfinding signage at several locations throughout the town. One of the things I think our residents have appreciated is, and this is something Mary was involved in, but it's the wayfinding signage that has gone up around the community. And residents like those So we're going to try to replicate some of those internal to some of our parks to kind of have a consistent signage, but also just, I think residents love to be able to know where they are, how to get from point A to point B, and those kinds of things. So it's one of the things that's on our list. Balanced development of future town-owned and HOA-owned parks and open space. I talked about that, and we'll continue to do that. With regards to open space, when we have development applications that come in, part of my role is working with applicants and community development to make sure we have enough open space. We have a minimum standard, and minimum is the optimal word, not maximum. We have a minimum standard of 20% of a development should be open space. So we work from that point forward. Hopefully we get more. Typically we like to see if it's feasible that it gets dedicated to the town. We own it, we're the stewards of it, and we take care of it. So that's one of the things that we've done for a number of years, and we'll continue to do that. Also an update of the Land Development Ordinance, LDO we call it sometimes, to ensure that parks and recreation amenities meet a growing need. And one of the things I think what we're going to be working on with community development and our consultant team is how do we get a little more creative with regards to the kinds of parks that we have within homeowners associations. Can they be a little more creative, a little more, I'll say, avant-garde from a design standpoint, and not your typical swing set and slide or whatever. So that's one of the things I think we're kind of excited about, and it's one of those things, I'll call it a little bit of low-hanging fruit that we can do as development continues to move forward. There were about 5 different themes that came out of the overall master plan process, and you can obviously see those themes up there. The first theme is manage and protect assets, and basically that's townwide capital projects of various sizes and scope, short-term and long-term. Second theme was enhance inclusive programming, and we want to make sure that it's available for all ages, abilities, and income levels. And that's that's part and parcel of over 80 strategic items, action items that are listed in the master plan. Connect people and places, and that's really to provide a safe mode of transportation. It could be walking, it could be cycling, it could even be roadways, access to parks, to trails, to open space, and to make sure that those connections make sense and that they're safe and that they're convenient. Enhance organization capacity. And that's really maintaining our staffing infrastructure and expanding, when I say expanding on staff, looking long-term what our staffing needs may be, but also from an educational standpoint or accreditation standpoint, a certification standpoint. That was really important, just developing that cohesive base of staff individuals throughout our department that can have the ability to enhance the larger organization. And then programming for the community. We wanted to make sure that any of the programming that we're doing or that we're thinking about doing is responsive and adaptable to the community needs, and that it's high quality and that it's affordable. We talked a little bit about, I just touched upon those 80-some strategic action items, which is kind of the backbone of the plan, if you think about it. It's the area that when we're going to start to implement that, we're going to go to the back, we're going to look at those 80 to 85 action items and start looking through how we can implement those. Some we can do without any cost, it's just a matter of staffing and time. Other ones, it may be a larger policy discussion on how we afford those various items, how we implement those. All of the action items include a timeline, and then they have potential funding sources. Theme 1, which we talked about in the last slide, an example is redesign and upgrade the parking area at Bar Triple C Park. That's something we've talked about for a number of years, and we've actually put some money in the budget for this year, and we're already starting meetings internally from a design standpoint of improving the parking lot, making it ready for lights, if you will, and then also exploring the cost of lighting the ball fields. We think that would, from the standpoint of allowing more uses downtown as far as softball and those kinds of things, would be beneficial. Plus paving the parking lot. We are starting to use Bar Triple C for a lot more, I'll say, special events, runs, and those kinds of things. And paving it would make it much more efficient use of that area. For some of our events now, we're having to park over in the Target parking lot and have police walk people across the street to get to those events. So that's one of the things to keep in mind. Theme number 2, address ADA priorities identified in the site visit. The consultant, Epley Group, did a really detailed ADA audit of everything in the Parks and Rec Department, both inside buildings, playgrounds, parking lots, all of those things. So we have a good base documentation of where we need to make improvements, where we need to make enhancements. Theme number 3, another example, adopt a policy on best practices for design of high-use multimodal trails, including signage, width, and ease of access. And that's something we've started to kind of scratch the surface on. It's really easy to build a trail, but we also know what goes along with that is signage, directional, maybe informational signage. Also looking at some of our older trails. Here again, the Cherry Creek Trail is 25 or 30 years old. How do we increase the capacity on that trail? And one of the things we're talking about is a parallel soft surface trail where it's feasible so that we can increase a little bit of capacity on that trail and obviously not spend the amount of money of widening it with concrete, because there's areas, quite honestly, you cannot do that. So that's one of the things that we're going to do. I think a couple of test sections along the Cherry Creek Trail this summer, so stay tuned for that. Theme 5, investigate community desire for special outdoor programming. And that can be a full range of things. From my perspective, one of the things that I've heard a lot over the years is people would like to get out on our open space and maybe have some tours, a little bit of an education when they're out there as far as bird watching or the type of foliage and those kinds of things. So again, that's an example, but that's one of the things that we're going to look at and explore a little further. So by way of update, on February 8th, the Planning Commission reviewed the same plan that is before you tonight, and they unanimously recommended approval. So I did want to make you aware of that. With that, I will conclude my presentation with staff's recommendation that the Town Council approve Resolution 18-014, adopting the Parks and Recreation and Open Space Master Plan 2018 to 2022 as part of the Parker 2035, a lot of dates, Parker 2035 Master Plan. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the Mayor Pro Tem and council members for any questions or thoughts.
Any questions for Dennis? John?
No, it's more of a comment. I think everybody up here and all the citizens with their citizen surveys just truly appreciate all the efforts that the Park and Rec Department do, yourself and your entire staff, Dennis. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
And I just remember how young we were when we started.
It's sad but true. I recognize that every morning when I get up and look in the mirror.
Dennis, when you mentioned comparing ourselves to other communities and gold medal winners, and those are already accredited, hasn't the town won?
We've won 2 gold medals.
Right.
Which is very
So we're
unusual.
comparing ourselves to our peers, perhaps not necessarily our
Yes.
betters, as it were.
Yes.
All right, just checking. I
In-
thought I remembered that.
In comparing ourselves, how was our involvement as far as the citizens go versus other towns? Was there any comments from the Epley Institute about that?
We did get a little bit of feedback, and one of the things, although it wasn't documented as far as number of responses based upon population and those kinds of things, but our consultant, they do this all over the country, so they had a very good handle on this. And the one thing they noticed is our residents were extremely passionate about Parks and Recreation in Parker, which I think bodes well. And they also weren't afraid to voice concerns, which I like. I mean, if you don't get concerns and issues, it's hard to improve. But by and large, the response was above average for other jurisdictions of similar size and population.
Outstanding. Well done, Parker.
All right, well, with that, we'll open it up for public comment. Again, you have 3 minutes. If anybody would like to address council on this item, we'll open it up at 7:43 PM. Anybody want to give Dennis a hard time about Parks and Recreation?
No.
Come on up, sir. Please give us your name and address for the record.
My name's Donald Parrott, and I live at 17648 Ponderosa Avenue in the Cottonwood subdivision. My street heading north runs into Preservation Park, and I and a number of my neighbors in Cottonwood have voiced our concerns about the status of that park over the years, and we're told that that was going to be addressed as part of this planning effort. And I just wondered if that was the case and if there's going to be some resolution. Thank you.
Actually, thank you for that. Actually, one of the, I don't know which number offhand, because like I said, there's over 80, but the strategic action items does talk about Preservation Park and doing some enhancements there, probably from a landscape perspective. I think at some point in the near future, we'll have to take an entire look at Preservation Park and what's the vision, long-term vision for that park. There was a master plan put together for that park probably 12 or 15 years ago that was never really implemented. Really what we ended up with is a trailhead, a parking lot, a restroom, and an old rail car, and then there are some historic structures that are there. So it is something we're going to have to look at a little closer, and that's definitely on our radar. Part of, and this is a little bit of an aside of, and Josh is aware of this, but we are working very hard with Aurora, Arapahoe County, and Douglas County for the E470 overcrossing, the regional trail overcrossing over Parker Road, which would happen just north, if not on Preservation Park property. So as part of that project, we're going to see a lot more eyes on Preservation Park, and so I think it behooves us to take a second look on any improvements and enhancements.
Yep, absolutely. No, there's been a lot of work done by that end as well. So, anybody else for public comment on this item? With that, we'll close public comment at 7:46, and I would need any other comments from council or a motion, please.
I move to approve resolution number 18-014.
Second.
Got a motion from Amy and a second from Debbie. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Dennis. And Mary.
Good work.
With that, we'll move on to item 8A, which is ordinance number 5.23.9 on second reading. It is a bill for an ordinance to repeal and readopt section 7.02.080 of the Parker Municipal Code concerning large vehicle parking and amending chapter 7.02 by the addition thereof of new section 7.02.085 concerning overtime parking violations. Doreen.
Good evening, how are you?
And I apologize, partner, I don't remember your name.
Riley.
All right, my bad.
I brought him down here in case there were specific questions in regards to what he's seen out there regarding these ordinance changes. So on the first one with large vehicle parking, this kind of came to fruition in regards to some of the calls we're getting from citizens in regards to kind of cleaning up this ordinance and some loopholes that the ordinance originally had where some people were circumventing the system. So it allows for that you can't just continue to move your vehicle in an attempt to circumvent the system. So it kind of cleans it up and gets rid of any of those loopholes that we believe were kind of in there that we were facing. So that's the first one. Do you have anything to?
Super.
And then the second one in regards to this is with the 2-hour parking in the downtown area. It's advising now to move your vehicle after the 2 hours within the 100 feet. The GPS systems that we're looking at for enforcement on the 2-hour parking, since it is GPS based, needs more of a variety, wider range, I should say, for vehicles to be moved. Riley has been out there writing reports and watching, and he's seen a vehicle sit in a spot, move their vehicle, and then park in that same exact spot within the 2 hours. So this would kind of get, rid of that and help with the enforcement piece from a technology standpoint.
Excellent. Riley?
Does that sound good?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything.
If you came down here, man, you got to talk.
Obviously, the overtime parking statute gives us a little bit of better grasp on what we're going to do with the downtown parking. And then back to the trailers, obviously that's a complaint I've received numerous times from the citizens where, we'll tag a vehicle or a trailer and it'll move just 5 feet down and it looks like I did nothing or my division did nothing, when obviously there's that little gap, which isn't, in my opinion, the intent of the original ordinance. And then obviously it expands it a little bit into the 6,000
pounds.
the 6,000 pounds and 22 feet. So that also includes some of the bigger box trucks that we see. Obviously, all this includes just the residential areas, just based on the feedback of kind of keeping our residential areas looking residential.
Gotcha.
That's very well said.
Perfect. Any questions?
So I guess I appreciate it. I appreciate refining the ordinance. It is always my worst fear to create an ordinance that we cannot enforce. And I hate to have things on the books that we either don't use or just cannot use. So I appreciate you refining it and definitely taking the time and the expert opinion to make this better for all the citizens. So thank you for that work.
No problem, thank you. Yeah, it was just a challenge that we faced in regards to vehicles being moved and then being called back out there. And so with the transition of neighborhood services, now community services over at the police department, I think it just provided a different lens to see different things through and looking at the ordinances in a different way. So I think it worked out really well, so thank you.
Any other questions? Gonna let Riley off the hook. All right. With that, we'll go ahead and open up public comment at 7:49 for anybody wishing to comment on ordinance number 5.23.9. Don, come on back up, partner.
Okay.
I will have you do your name and address again for the record, please.
It's Donald Parrott at 17648 Ponderosa Avenue. And by the way, we have worked with Doreen and her staff over the years because of this problem with commercial trailers, and they've been as responsive and frustrated with the existing law. So I'm glad that they've given some attention to this. We think there might be some unintended consequences of the new language, however, and my wife and I put together some comments that I'd like to give to council when...
I'll have you give them to that fine young gentleman right there, and then he can pass those along. And I apologize, my nifty little timer is... I somehow broke this thing.
Well, I will keep it short. I've circled 3 items that I just wanted to highlight. One is that the way we read the language, it almost appears as if trailers under 22 feet would be somehow or other exempt from this. And in our subdivision, there are an awful lot of people that have small little camper trailers that use the city street to store them permanently. In fact, one of our neighbors was storing it in front of the post office cluster box, which was a problem for the post office and for us. So we don't think that the length is necessary requirement. And also, we don't think that in our neighborhood there ought to ever be a tractor trailer or the actual trailer itself parked on a street, even for 48 hours. We just don't think they belong there at all. And then the last thing is the language about actively engaged in rendering services. We think that that's going to be misused by people, and it's going to cause enforcement problems down the road. And we've made some alternative suggestions in this handout to address that. So with those comments, I think I'm under 3 minutes, but
I don't know, I broke the clock, so I don't...
Maybe I broke it.
Thanks, Don.
Thank you for considering.
Absolutely. Anyone else for public comment on this item? With that, we'll close public comment at 7:52 and entertain any other comments from council or a motion, please.
I just want to state again to Mr. Parrott, Mr. and Mrs. Parrott, none of the ordinances in this town and this charter are written in marble. So whether or not we're not going to legislate from the dais tonight, maybe, but if your comments are always taken heavily. from citizens, especially when you take the time to do this. So again, these ordinances were refined and improved, and they may be refined and improved in the future. With that, and I move to approve ordinance number 5.23.9 on second reading.
Second.
Got a motion from Josh and a second from Amy. Council, please vote. At least that's not broken. Motion passes unanimously. Next item is 8B, which is ordinance number 9.266.1 on second reading. It's a bill for an ordinance to approve the 2018 intergovernmental agreement to provide recreational programming by and between the town of Parker, the town of Castle Rock, and Reuter-Hess Recreation Authority concerning the Reuter-Hess Reservoir. Speaking of water stuff, Dennis. Mary.
Yes, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. This ordinance is essentially a renewal of the IGA that was approved last year between the town of Parker, town of Castle Rock, and the Reuter-Hess Recreation Authority. So this essentially extends the recreation activities for next year, for 2018 and beyond, to provide activities at the reservoir. Last year, we had some stand-up paddleboard activities. The plan is to continue with those activities and to add a few, actually, including more kayaking opportunities, more open swim. There'll be our open swim competition as we had last year. So just really looking to expand activities out there last year. Also, some site improvements following the master plan, the Recreation Authority master plan, and the Reuter-Hess master plan. There's been a new gate installed. There's a new parking lot that will accommodate about 200 more vehicles this year. And the authority is currently moving forward with and prioritizing some of the other projects included in the master plan. So that's where we're at this time. And with that, I'll entertain any questions that you may have about the authority or the plans for 2018.
Josh.
I think one of the biggest things we see, obviously, is when can we use Reuter-Hess? When are we going to be able to use that? It's Parker's. Could you, for Facebook and for all of us in the room, explain the structure of the authority and what it is we're doing tonight as far as programming and recreation here at the reservoir?
Sure. So the authority is comprised of essentially 5 jurisdictions: Lone Tree, Parker, Castle Rock, Douglas County, and Castle Pines. And collectively, this authority is their charge is to program activities at Reuter-Hess, recreational activities. Currently, the reservoir is not able to just have open activities out there for people to just drop in, just because the site isn't simply ready infrastructurally for activities. There's a process for approving and inspecting any craft that is brought out there, such as kayaks and stand-up paddleboards. The fear is the quagga and the zebra mussels and the infestation of the reservoir and keeping that water pristine, as it is a drinking reservoir. So the authority's charge is really to come up with programmed activities for the public until Parker Water is actually ready to allow public use of the facility. So we're trying our best to offer extensive programming to the extent that we're capable of with our resources out there. And those types of activities do include the paddleboarding and trails. Castle Rock is doing a trails day, hopefully getting more passive use out there, tours of the facility, and more kayaking. So that's essentially.
So if I could.
Yeah.
Parker Water owns the reservoir. It's a drinking water reservoir, yet they understand that it's a beautiful, pristine area, and they would love to see people recreate. Parker Water, knowing very well that they're not in the recreation business, has tapped the communities and the county surrounding them to come in and program with a very light touch the reservoir.
Right.
Thank you.
Yes.
And Mary, one of the questions that I get, so maybe you can speak to it at least for what we know it currently, is any type of, you're speaking of kayaking and paddle boating, speak to any motorized type of craft.
So currently, motorized craft is not allowed on the reservoir just because it is a pristine body of water, a drinking body of water. So they have limited any access of motorized vehicles on site, and that will probably be the rule moving forward, to not allow motorized vehicles out there, motorized boats of any type. Any other questions?
Excellent, thanks, Mary.
Thank you.
With that, we'll open it up for public comment on this item at 7:58 PM. If there's anybody wishing to address council on this item. Don, I was ready for you, pal. With that, we'll close public comment at 7:58. Any other comments or a motion, please?
I move to approve ordinance number 9.266.1 on second reading.
Second?
Motion from John and a second from Nate. Council, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. With that, we'll move on to item 8C, which is ordinance 9.259.1 on second reading. It's a bill for an ordinance to approve amendment number 01 to the intergovernmental agreement by and between the Town of Parker and Colorado Department of Transportation concerning funding for the construction of Parker Road Sidewalk Connection Project on the east side from Sulphur Gulch Trail to Plaza Drive. Mr. Chris Hudson, the man who can squeeze blood from a stone at CDOT.
So tonight in front of you, you have approval of an amendment to an IGA, an intergovernmental agreement that was approved via ordinance back on November 7th, 2016. This is for the Parker Road sidewalk on the east side from Sulphur Gulch Trail to Plaza Drive. And as we got into getting ready to ask for concurrence to advertise their project last fall, CDOT became aware that they used the wrong form of contract that did not reference a necessary federal requirements known as the super circular, which you gotta love federal requirements. They're called super circular as a trade name. So this amendment with you tonight is basically using the contract they should have used back in 2016. It has not affected our timeline, including we received concurrence to award the project last week from CDOT, and it'll be coming to you at the next town council meeting. So with that, I'll answer any questions. It just did not change any of the requirements of the original contract, other than it has the requirement, the federal super circular requirements referenced.
That's outstanding. Any questions for Chris on federal transportation, super circulars, anything of that nature?
All ownership along the stretch are cooperating and
Yes,
sidewalks?
we have all the easements in place. We are getting ready to, basically, next week, or the next town council meeting will be the notice of award, which will be going to you guys for approval. We have that concurrence, and so everything's coming together. Assuming that we get an award, we'll notify all the property owners that all the easements and temporary construction easements are becoming hard, so to speak. They were floating until we got a notice to proceed. So
Awesome.
it'll be done this summer.
Awesome.
Super. Thanks, Chris.
Circular.
Super circular. Super circular.
Not just circular.
Super.
We can ride this joke all night, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I'll open up public comment at 8:01 PM if there's anybody wishing to address council on this item, or if anybody's thoroughly confused at this point. The scouts are staring off into space with... Stay with me, gentlemen. Stay with me. With that, we'll close public comment at 8:01 and request a motion, please.
I move to approve ordinance number 9.259.1 on second reading.
Second?
Motion from Josh and a second from Debbie. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Chris. Last item, there's a couple pieces of this, is item D, regarding the Main Street Center Amendment 1, Lot 1B for the Parker Tap House. This first item is item D1, which is ordinance number 1.480.5 on second reading. It's a bill for an ordinance to approve the reinstatement and Fifth Amendment to the agreement for sale and purchase of land by and between the Town of Parker and ACG LLC concerning the gym property Weldy.
Hello, good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and Council. So this is the Fifth Amendment and reinstatement of the schoolhouse property that was formerly the gymnasium to be sold to ACG LLC, which will be Parker Tap House and Distillery. The Fourth Amendment expired on January 31st, 2018. The Purchasers Bank at that time was not prepared to close. They're still waiting the final appraisal and environmental phase 1 before they will close. The appraisal and environmental report, last I had indication from the bank, they would be prepared to close first quarter 2018. I have not had an update from them to give me a more solid date than that at this point. And then I have Carolyn here to talk about the second half of this. And we do have the applicant here, so they can address any questions after we're done.
Okay, thank you. Corey, we'll have you come up afterwards, partner. Carolyn.
Good evening. So the developer's delay in closing on this property also caused the site plan approvals that the town council gave on February 9th, 2017 to expire. Staff is requesting an extension of the site plan approval until July 1st, 2018 to run concurrently with the requested extension for the closing that Weldy was speaking about.
Perfect. So before I have the applicant come up, do we have anybody have any questions for our two ladies? Nope. Perfect. Corey, floor is yours, partner. Don't know if you have anything to add or just give you the floor for a moment.
Well, it's kind of out of my hands with the bank. You know, I mean, they came up to us and was like, or when we were talking to them, and I was speaking with 3 banks. We went with the one that had the lowest percentage down, and he's kind of drug his feet. Well, they can contend, and it's kind of out of my hands with the appraisal and the environmental study. The environmental study I know was done. I talked to him today. He said that the appraisal was supposed to be back any day.
Gotcha.
I think they were still trying to close. He told her that he was going to try to close this month, and we were like, no, we have to go in front of council again. And so I would assume middle of next month, any time, is when he plans on closing.
Since it's done by ordinance, we have to wait until I don't know what the official term is, Jen.
10 days after the
10 days
posting
afterwards, yeah.
in the paper. So that really takes us to the week of March 12th, once that has occurred.
Okay.
And this has been post back. I got my building permit in October, I think it was, finally. So all these amendments going forward weren't always my fault. It was the city too, so just FYI.
Understood, and they've and Weldy and the crew have kept us updated on all of those things. So appreciate you being here tonight, just to be a sounding board a little bit.
Absolutely, yeah. Any questions?
Any questions for Corey?
Still excited?
Still excited.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you, sir. With that, we'll open up. Jim, can I just do both ordinances at the same time since they're sort of a concurrent thing, or do we have to do them separately?
You can have one public comment on both and then 2 separate motions.
Gotcha. So with that, we'll open up public comment at 8:06 p.m. if there's anybody wishing to address council on this item. Seeing everyone rush to the front, we'll close public comment at 8:06. I would need a motion on ordinance number 1.480.5 and then separately on the resolution below.
I move to approve I move to approve resolution number 18-018.
Second.
Got a motion from Josh and a second from Amy. Council, please vote. Motion passes, and then the other item?
I move to approve ordinance number 1.480.5 on second reading.
Second.
Got a motion from Amy and a second from Debbie. Council, please vote. Motion passes, and with that, we have no further items in front of council. We'll adjourn the meeting at 8:07 p.m. Thank you, everybody.